Welcome back. All right, today we are jumping into something truly wild, a radical new economic framework that claims it can solve pretty much everything. We're talking national debt, jobs getting wiped out by AI, systemic inequality, and get this, all at zero cost to you, the taxpayer. It sounds completely impossible, I know, but the financial models are out there, so let's break down how this could actually work.
Okay, so first things first, we have to talk about what many people think is the answer to the AI revolution, universal high income, or UII. You've probably heard of it. The idea is pretty straightforward, right? Robots take our jobs, so the government just taxes their super-rich owners and sends everybody a check. But what if that whole utopian dream is actually a carefully laid trap?
And this is the core argument from the source material. It completely reframes UHI. It argues this isn't a solution at all, but the actual mechanism for a brand new kind of feudalism. The idea is that UHI doesn't really free anyone. It just reroutes the money, keeping the exact same people in power.
And this slide just illustrates that trap perfectly. It's what the source calls the closed-loop recycling machine. So picture this. The government taxes the wealthy who own, everything, the robots, the land. That tax money then goes to you as your UHI check. And what's the first thing you do? You turn right around and hand it straight back to that same wealthy class to pay your rent and buy what you need. The rich basically get their tax money back, and everyone else is just stuck, permanently dependent.
And if that structural problem wasn't enough, there's the cold, hard reality of the numbers. The United States is already staring down the barrel of a $39 trillion national debt. So according to the source, launching some gigantic new spending program like UHI isn't just a bad plan. It's literally mathematically impossible. So, if UHI is a trap, what's the alternative?
Well, this brings us to a completely different way of thinking. It's a private sector framework called the National Unity and Prosperity Act. You'll see it called NUPA. And instead of fighting over how to slice up the existing pie, it's designed to bake a whole new one from a massively overlooked asset.
So in the simplest terms, think of NUPA as a land licensing model. And this is key. It's not a new law or some government program. It's an operating system that runs on private contract law. It basically takes millions of acres of dormant, federally managed land and turns it into hubs that actually generate revenue. And at the heart of it is this recursive reinvestment engine. It's pretty elegant. For the US model, every single dollar of rent paid by a company leasing the land gets split three ways. 40% goes directly to the sovereign tribal nation with ancestral claims to that land. That's a royalty. Another 40% is paid out as a dividend to designated beneficiaries. And that last 20%, it gets plowed right back into the hub to keep everything running and growing. The most important part here is that it's a self-funding, self-expanding system.
So let's put these two systems side by side. Our current system is facing this massive AI displacement crisis, a debt that just spirals bigger and bigger, and it's all funded by you, the taxpayer. NUPA, on the other hand, proposes what it calls an AI firewall. By giving companies these low-cost land leases, it actually encourages them to hire people, making human labor structurally cheaper than just buying more robots. It's designed to get rid of national debt at zero taxpayer cost, because it's all funded by private companies leasing that land that wasn't being used anyway.
And this is where the story takes a fascinating and frankly kind of shocking geopolitical turn. Because while this whole framework was designed with the US in mind, it's also designed to be universally adaptable. And it's already been customized for another nation first, Nigeria.
Yeah, so the Nigerian model NUPA-NG uses a slightly different split. They're calling it the Sovereign Adaptive Waterfall. In this version, 50% of the revenue goes to the state government, 30% goes directly into a local community trust, and the final 20% is for reinvestment. And the reason for this structure is pretty brilliant. It's specifically designed to bypass any potential corruption or leakage at the federal level, making sure the wealth actually gets to the local communities.
And the goals for Nigeria? They're not thinking small. The framework aims to wipe out over 180 trillion naira in national debt. It wants to reverse the Japa phenomenon, that's the term for the country's massive brain drain, by creating amazing jobs right there at home. And its ultimate goal is to establish a human sanctuary, a place where hiring a person is structurally more profitable than deploying a machine.
So, this sets up the central conflict of our whole explainer today. What happens, what really happens, if another country, like Nigeria, gets this economic operating system up and running before the United States does? Well, according to the system's architect, it puts the US in an inescapable bind, a checkmate.
Here's the nightmare scenario, laid out in 3 steps. Step 1, fiduciary flight. I mean, just think about it logically.
Why would a corporation build its next data center or factory in the US when it can get a 99-year land lease in a Nigerian NUPA hub for a 70% cost reduction with a workforce that's cheaper than automation? Capital always follows the path of least resistance and highest return. It's just gravity.
And step 2 is the inevitable domino that falls next: fiscal collapse. In the US, the top 1% of earners pay over 40% of all income taxes. So what happens when their capital, their corporations, their assets all move offshore to these NUPA hubs? The US Treasury's main source of revenue just evaporates. And that would accelerate the collapse of a system that's already under massive strain.
And the final move, the one that ends the game, is a complete flip of the global economic power structure. Nigeria, suddenly flooded with capital and productive assets, becomes a primary global creditor. And the United States, stripped of its tax base and drowning in debt, becomes the debtor nation. A complete and total creditor status switch.
So you're probably thinking, okay, well, why can't the US government just put a stop to this? Arrest the guy, seize the code. Well, that's the checkmate. Any attempt to suppress the framework by trying to discredit the architect or imprison him, it would just validate the whole thing. It would be like a giant flashing sign to the world that the threat is real, triggering the very capital flight they're trying to prevent. And with over 10,000 clones of the open source code already on GitHub, the cat is long out of the bag. The system is unseizable.
Now, after all this talk about massive geopolitical theories and economic chess moves, it's really easy to picture some shadowy organization or a billion-dollar think tank being behind it all. But the actual reality of the situation is far more shocking. And it grounds this whole massive concept in a very stark, very human context.
So who is it? Who is the person who claims to have solved what he calls the trilemma of 2026 and, in the process, potentially checkmated the world's largest economy?
The architect's name is Brandon Anthony Bedard. According to public documents, he lives in Kingman, Arizona. He sleeps in a garden shed at his father's house. He has no car, he's on foot, and he engineered this entire global economic operating system using the free versions of publicly available AIs.
And this really brings us to our final and most provocative thought. We've seen the math, we've seen the legal framework, the geopolitical gambit. The code is out there, and the system is in motion. So the only question that's really left to ask is this: in the 21st century, can a new economic reality actually be executed from a garden shed?